So when I say legacy, I know this word has a lot of different meanings for different people. What is your perception of that? What do you think about when you think legacy?
Yeah. So legacy for me is that you have created something of such value and impact that it lives past your expiration date. And so, we think of Abraham Lincoln left a
Yeah.
legacy, we think of Jesus Christ, right? Left a legacy, right? We think of people who have not only done something of great import and of great impact to humanity, but that act or that body of work or that thought leadership, let's call it
Yeah.
thought leadership, it becomes perennial, becomes
Mhm.
evergreen, becomes something that we all look at and honor and appreciate and find value in.
Welcome to Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast, the show where we ask the big question: what will they say about you when you're gone? Each week, we sit down with icons, trailblazers, and legends in the making to dive into their stories, scandals, and the legacies they're leaving behind. And now, here's your host, the video godfather himself, Lou Bortone.
Hey, it's Lou, and welcome back to Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Angel B Hartwell. And yeah, we're not dead yet. So
Very exciting that we're not dead yet.
it is definitely better than the alternative. So thank you so much for joining us here. I have to say, you're really the person that inspired me to get back to podcasting. So thank you, because I just see that you've been a prolific content producer and doing this for a while. You have a couple different podcasts, which we'll talk about. But thanks for lighting a fire under my ass, whether you knew it or not.
When you and I knew one another back in the day, originally Wildfire was my last name.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
maybe there's a little leftover from that character that died.
Yes. I'm so glad that we're here together. We have known each other for a while, and you really are a prolific producer. I don't know how you managed to do it so consistently, because I find like just getting one podcast out a week is a lot. So if you tell us a little bit before we get into legacy about your podcast, and I see many well-deserved awards behind you there. That is impressive.
Yeah, I started podcasting in 2018. My first podcast was called Men on Purpose. And that was back when podcasting, there was only like 500,000 podcasts in total. And when I started Men on Purpose, it was part of a rebrand for me, and I entered into the podcasting space with that show specifically because I had started a brand that was intended to serve executive men. And I knew that they weren't going to be watching YouTube. They were going to be the kind of men who were being driven to work maybe, or would be listening while they were biking or hiking or doing their morning cardio or whatever. And so
Mhm.
it just was clear to me that being in their ears was really important. And then I started Wickedly Smart Women, which was my second show,
Yep.
about a year and a half later. And Wickedly Smart Women immediately took off. And
Wow.
then I was in a place where I was like, it just was, I had overextended myself a little bit. And I realized that I was complete with Men on Purpose. And I
Yep.
ended up selling it. And I was the
Oh,
first
wow.
independent podcaster that I know of. I believe I'm the first independent podcaster to ever sell a podcast and
That's
the brand
amazing.
that goes with it. Yeah.
Yep.
And then I started leading Visionaries almost 2 years ago. And so, yeah, now I've got 14 awards for Wickedly Smart Women, 3 awards for leading Visionaries. Both of them are #1 internationally ranked. And yeah,
Wow.
it's a consistency game.
That's it. I think that's the trick, and it's not easy, and it's the same with video and YouTube, or if you're doing this, you just got to keep at it. So tell me about, was there anything that inspired that like the more recent podcasts, or just, you said it's time to do stuff for women as well? Or,
Yeah. So what happened with Men on Purpose was after I started Wickedly Smart Women,
Mhm.
then I had 2 podcasts. One was just men, one was just women. Men are men identifying, women are women identifying.
Yeah.
And I got up to about 163 episodes with Men on Purpose. And what I was about 3 months into to having now starting the production of Wickedly Smart Women. And I was just like, I feel like I'm done for the time being. I thought I was going to just put it on hiatus. So I made the decision to put it on hiatus, and I had a bank of 3 months worth of episodes. And then I was at this event, and there was a mastermind at the end of the event, and this guy was sitting at the table. He was a host of a podcast.
Yeah.
And he was a paid host. So he didn't have ownership of the show that he was hosting. And it was a real estate show. And he was sitting at this mastermind saying, I just want to have my own show. I just wanted to work with men. I want to help men to be on purpose. And I was like, I wonder if he'd be interested in buying the show. So I approached him, and he said, you're an answered prayer. So then when I sold that, I went through that whole process and transfer of IP and it's quite a process to do that. And then I continued to operate Wickedly Smart Women, but leading Visionaries was in the background for me for a while. And then Corona happened, and I just kept chugging along with Wickedly Smart Women until 2 years ago when Leading Visionaries said it's time. And so I started Leading Visionaries, and Leading Visionaries is like, it's my third show. So it's also non-gender specific, and it feels like it's the direction that I'm going. And it really speaks to legacy. Your show is about legacy. Leading Visionaries is also very much about bringing in your vision and bringing it to life, and potentially leaving a legacy with that vision.
So when I say legacy, I know this word has a lot of different meanings for different people. What is your perception of that? What do you think about when you think legacy?
Yeah, so legacy for me is that you have created something of such value and impact that it lives past your expiration date. We think of Abraham Lincoln, left a legacy. We think of Jesus Christ, left a legacy. We think of people who have not only done something of great import and of great impact to humanity, but that act or that body of work or that thought leadership, let's call it thought leadership, it becomes perennial, becomes evergreen, becomes something that we all look at and honor and appreciate and find value in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know, like I used to think when I was young and naive, a legacy is, you have to have a library named after you or something like that. But okay, I'm not MLK or JFK. How does the average person do that so that they're remembered, but not necessarily has to have their name on a building?
I think we all have legacy potential within us. And so the first thing that I think an average person needs to do is say, yes, I'm willing. Yes, I'm willing to devote myself. Yes, I'm willing to put my life force energy into this belief or this creation or this vision that I have. And for some, legacy is very personal, and it's just within your own family. There are many people who, in their family, there is the one in the family that had so much impact and influence on the family. Like you said, legacy doesn't mean having a multi-zillion-dollar library named after you or a wing at the hospital named after you. It's not always about a financial representation. Right.
Yeah.
Like a wing at a hospital, or like this woman who just left $1 billion to some college, to some university that everybody gets paid for. Everybody who's doing a certain thing in a certain field of study gets paid for forever. It's not always monetary. And so for the average person, you can separate it from the idea of you having to become a zillionaire and really maintain your focus on, what am I called to contribute to life? What am I personally called to contribute to life? And even if there's only your own family that remembers you, that's enough.
Yeah. Yep. That's cool. Yep. Do you have, I've been thinking, I don't know why, maybe I've had a few brushes with death or whatever, but I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, what happens when I'm gone? Am I just gone? Do you have a sense? I know this is personal and everybody believes a different thing. So, and if you just want to answer, that's okay. But okay, what happens when the physical angel is gone? You're already an angel, so you have a dead
angel, right? I'm already an angel. let me say that I have experienced multiple near-death experiences.
That's what I want.
One where I was almost actually murdered. And the most recent near-death experience, I flipped a kayak in the river and got wedged up underneath a tree that was over the river and literally popped out the other side miraculously. And if there had been a rock on the other side of where that tree was, I would have been dead. So I've had multiple near-death experiences, car accidents. I walked in on a robbery where the guy had just tied up my boyfriend and had a gun. And I've had a boyfriend who put a gun to my face. I've had a lot of near-death experiences. So where do we go from here? My belief system is that we are infinite and eternal beings, and that we embody to create these experiences that our soul craves. And then when it's time for this personality or this physicality, when this personality / physicality has completed its little choice of assignments on the planet, our essence goes back to source and then recreates. If you think about life, if you look at life as constantly in a state of dying and recreating, dying and recreating, dying and recreating. So I believe that we do recreate, and I am the ancestor for the me I'm becoming 10,000 years from now.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I would love to think that's true. It's almost like I hope God recycles, because I'm back and it's so funny because you see like the different cultures and the different traditions of, like in Egypt, the way the pharaohs and things were buried. I got to get all this stuff so that when I go to the next life, I mean, I even got to the point where I told my wife, I'm like, when I go, I want you to mix my ashes with my dog Rocco's ashes so I can have him next time around. I don't know if it works that way, but we'll see. So
yeah, I have a desire to be made into a tree. I don't want to be cremated. I don't want to be buried and then bombed or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's a new thing where you can just be put in a pod and you turn into the forest. So
there you go. Yeah, that's cool. Have you ever thought about how you want to be remembered and, what people will say? I always say people, when I'm gone, they'll probably say that's son of a bit enough, but that son of a bitch of money.
Yeah, it's interesting, Lou. I have had this awareness for quite a long time, probably at least 20 years, that what I am here to do is leave a legacy of light. And whatever that looks like, it could be things I've created, it could be impressions I've made on the people that I connect with. It could be that I'm not personally remembered, but there's just more light in the world after I'm gone, or while I'm here and after I'm gone.
Yep.
And so for me, it's really about leaving a legacy of light. It's not about whether or not my name is remembered or any of those things. It's more about, have I lived in a way that has illuminated people's hearts and minds?
Yeah, that's how I think. When you walk into a room, I just feel better. It's just, I don't know what it is, but and it's always been that way. But the other interesting thing, I think from you, I see you as you're constantly reinventing yourself. And then also not just from like a brand or whatever, you've changed your name a couple times.
5.
Wow. So what inspires that? You just feel like you just get a sense that it's time to be this.
So the first time I changed my name, I got married, and that was just social conditioning. But you do the thing. And then I got divorced and took my maiden name back. So that was the second name change. So that was also social conditioning. The third time happened after I had a spiritual awakening. And during that spiritual awakening process, one of the things that happened was I started to question, like, who am I? I asked the big question. That's a big question. When you start to ask that question, you're going to get some interesting answers. Yeah. So I asked, who am I? And it was in my own healing, like transformational spiritual awakening window that I met this woman who was my massage therapist, and I was on her table and she was massaging me, and she's on my right leg, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman was made for this. Who am I? What am I here for? And that was when I heard on the table, it just came in because I asked the question, I got an answer. You are a wildfire. And so the wildfire came in 2003, and it wasn't until mid 2004 during another meditative experience that I received from the divine. Master Jesus, Archangel Michael, and Saint Germain came in, and Master Jesus put his hands on my head in this meditation and said, "You're amethyst."
Wow.
And I was like, yes, I am. And that's when I knew the A was a wildfire. So that's when I became Amethyst Wildfire. And that was a very deeply spiritual experience.
Yeah.
And I was Amethyst Wildfire for 13 years. And then I had a near-death experience where I was almost murdered by a family member. And after that, after I managed to get out of that situation and escape that situation, 3 days later, I'm in the aftershock of that whole experience, and bubbles up from my deep inside, "You're emerald now." I was like, "What? What?" And so I said, "Okay." And then I said, "Emerald wildfire? No, emerald peaceful green forest." So I became Emerald Peaceful Green Forest after that near-death experience.
Yeah.
And I carried that name for 4 years. And then as we went into Corona, which was a global death experience, and we had a global death and rite of passage there, I ended up getting some suggestions that I needed to check the name numerology for my name. And it said, it's bad for money, it's bad for health, it's bad for relationships. You'll create something and you'll have it almost near fruitfulness and somebody will take it from you. It was like all of these bad things with Emerald Peaceful Green Forest. So I was like, screw that. I don't need to keep this. I don't need to spend the rest of my life having those experiences. And so this name is a chosen name that came out of working with the Kabbalarian Society. That's how I got the name numerology thing.
Oh, okay.
And they gave us 120 first names, 120 last names, and 120 middle name choices across 3 different letters. And so this is the name I chose for myself. Yeah.
That's cool. And it's good to know that you can reinvent yourself. And a lot of people probably think this is who I am and I'm stuck. And you've been really inspirational about, oh my gosh, you're totally reinventing yourself by changing legally and
within 3 days of changing to Anjel B Hartwell, like I had a $25,000 client, and I had been in a drought for a long time because Emerald Peaceful Green Forest was bad for money. I was like, I don't need to carry this.
Yeah. It's good to know you can, and you've done really, just like I said, not just throwing a name on a website, but you've got your license changed and all that stuff.
Everything. Yeah.
Passport.
It's everything. My passport, all of it. Yeah. I know that whole process. And what I will say is that your name is your signature. It is your signature. It is the energy that you're sending out into the world. And in making these choices, I've also come up against a lot of pushback because it's not something that people normally do. But hopefully I can be a role model for sovereignty.
Yeah.
And every time you change your name, the old persona, the old energy, the old signature dies. That's a death and rebirth experience as well.
Yeah. And I came from, my dad was he was Lucio when he was born. My grandfather was Lucido. So I came from all these. So do I change it? Because I want to be Luca. That was my nickname when I was young. And I thought that would be fun.
And you can. And so one of the things that happens especially when you're named after, you can carry the ancestral traumas. You carry the gifts, but also the traumas. And if you feel like Luca is really calling to you, I vote yes, Lou. Yeah, I imagine that you will be a different person. And I will love you. I will love you completely and totally and accept you.
Thanks. And I've known you under a few different names, so I'm glad that we've been able to have that longevity. And it's funny too, because you say, do you carry that stuff from your ancestors? Because I always, my grandfather came from Italy, grew up in the Depression. They had 13 kids. Oh my God. And my dad, so he had a bit of a scarcity mentality, having grown up through the Depression and with a big family. And then I thought, wait, there was one time where I felt like I could not earn more money than my dad because that would dishonor him. And thank God I got rid of that belief. But it's amazing the stuff that you carry with you from those past lives, whether it's yours or your ancestors.
Absolutely. So if Lou Bortone is going to die and Luca is going to be born, it's very important to write an obituary or a eulogy
Yeah.
so when I let go of Amethyst Wildfire, I asked somebody that you and I both know, Nancy Marmolejo,
Oh, yeah.
a friend of mine, a medicine woman. I asked her if she would write me a eulogy.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very ceremonial, and you want to go through the ritual. It's not just, oh, today I'm going to be somebody else. Bam.
Yeah.
It's a very deep, spiritual, and legal process.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's not just, I'm going to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and get a new license.
No,
So
it's
that's
not.
cool. That's really cool. One of the questions I like to ask on this podcast, and I think it'll be interesting for you because you've had so many sort of phases of reinventions. Is there anything you would ask or tell your 20-year-old self now that you've had the years of experience?
Yeah. So what I would tell my 20-year-old self, and this is actually an active practice of mine, Lou, I constantly am sending courage down the timeline to my former self, right?
Yeah.
I'm constantly sending courage and illumination and clarity and peace and healing down the timeline. Right now, if I were to connect with my 20-year-old self, I would encourage her to get out of the relationship she is in and trust that she can take care of herself, and to follow her, to learn about and follow her deepest knowing, to really start to trust and ground in her own deepest knowing. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The other question I ask, a little tongue in cheek, I know, and you're a speaker, so sometimes speakers have walk-on songs. If you had a walk-off song, what might that be? A celebration.
Yeah, because I want everybody dancing at the walk-off.
Yeah.
Let it be a dance party. Yes, people might feel sad or cry or whatever, but let's celebrate. I want it to be a celebration.
That's awesome. Tell us what you're up to now, a podcast, other stuff like that, just so that folks can follow you. And
yeah. So with Wickedly Smart Women, I'm actually really working on expanding that brand and increasing the value of the brand. So one of the things that we're doing with Wickedly Smart Women is I've just finished creating an offer for corporate women who are feeling that call to leave corporate and start consulting.
yeah.
So it's our Start Smart Consultancy Blueprint.
Oh, cool.
And so that's part of the Wickedly Smart Women brand. And a lot of what I'm doing with Wickedly Smart Women is I'm pulling more of me out and making it more brand forward to increase the value of the brand. And if the right fit person came along and wanted to buy that, I would probably sell it.
Yeah.
And then leading Visionaries, I'm just nurturing that right now and growing that right now. And then my consultancy business, I am really looking at being engaged with people who we're going to walk in partnership for a long period of time, and I can be their executive advisor. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I call it the consigliere effect.
Right.
And you're one of, and I know there's a zillion podcasts out there, and fortunately it continues to grow, and there's still a lot of opportunity, but you're one of the few folks I know who really treats it as a business and monetizes it. How were you able to do that? Did you just decide one day that this thing's going to make money? Or
when I started my first podcast, Men on Purpose, it was very intentional. Here's what I like to say. My podcast serves my business serves my life, serves my purpose. So when I started Men on Purpose, it was as a marketing vehicle for my consultancy business. And within the first 4 months, it was ranked in the top 200. And I had my first $10,000 client who turned into a $50,000 client from the show, a person who had seen the show on Twitter, applied to be a guest, became a guest. Then we ended up having a consultancy arrangement with one another. And Men on Purpose was monetized within 4 months with a $50,000 client. Wickedly Smart Women was monetized before it even launched. My
Wow.
first few episodes, I had a 5-figure payday with a client who came in for consulting from that show. And Leading Visionaries has monetized in the multi 6 figures already within less than 2 years. Yeah. So it's very intentional.
Yeah.
The podcast is meant to serve the business, and it's not a hobby. It's not a game.
Right.
It's not something that I have to do for creative expression or outlet. It's a win-win-win situation. I am creating amazing content for people to listen to all over the world that's award-winning, and I'm not doing it for free. I need to be compensated, and my business needs to be compensated. And I have a team. I have an editing team. I have a production assistance team. I have an operations manager. It's a business.
Yeah.
It's part of this bigger business. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way.
That's awesome. And because I know you've been there before, but I got back from Podfest and it amazed me how many folks either they're at Podfest, but they don't have a podcast, or they do, but it's a hobby. But if you come into it, like you said, intentional, it's a business, it's going to make money. And that's a great way to approach it.
Yeah. And if you look at how many podcasts there are out there now, a lot of people wanted to suddenly be podcasters during Corona, right?
Yeah.
If you're part of the bigger podcasting space, there is a guy, Alex Sanfilippo from Podmatch, who does a monthly report on the state of podcasting. And he has a whole thing about active. There's 3.5 million approximately podcasts, but some of them are just like 6 episodes and then they're gone. You know what I mean? The person is gone. So there's only apparently 53,000 active, like really active podcasts. And those are the ones that you got to be really dedicated to your hobby or you're being monetized.
Right.
That's what keeps people going.
Yeah. I'm an example of that because when I was doing my Godfather podcast, it was just a passion project. And I didn't go into it thinking maybe it'll make money, but I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I did my season. I did my 12 episodes. I'm good. But now this is a little bit different because, and again, thanks to you, I came into this legacy podcast thinking part of my business was going to be doing legacy branding, which is still in progress. But I was thinking like, okay, if I'm going to do legacy branding, I should have a legacy podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you for your inspiration and your guidance. And you are a really great role model to follow in terms of podcasting and other good stuff. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Lou. I really appreciate it as well, and encourage people to just stop by and see my podcasts and
are there any
reach out. Yeah.
Best place to find you?
So the best place to find me is creativeageleader.com. That's my main site. And then if you just want to listen to the podcast and you want to go on the podcasting apps, it's Wickedly Smart Women podcast or Leading Visionaries podcast.
Yeah. One last question, just out of curiosity. Wickedly Smart Women. I say wicked a lot because I'm from Medford, Mass. Was this a regional thing or is it different?
No, it just came in. That was the name. It just came in. Part of it's a little tongue in cheek. Yes, I've grown up in New England. I grew up in New Hampshire. So a lot of people think it was because of that, but that's not really why. It's a little tongue in cheek because some people might call me a witch. I'm not, I don't call myself a witch. I call myself a medicine woman. But so there's that little edge of the metaphysical, the spiritual, and the intellect. It's the intuition and the intellect. Wickedly smart women. And then Leading Visionaries has also got a dual thing going because I can be speaking to somebody who's a leading visionary, or I can be interviewing somebody who's leading other visionaries. Like in your case, doing the legacy branding, you're playing a role in leading another visionary to express themselves visually.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Anjel. It's so great to see you and talk with you and catch you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast. Please subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast, and do it now while you're still alive and kicking. Check out other episodes at ohshitimdead.com.